It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. Al, I'd like to start with you. We've been watching President Trump in New York with a hush money story that could have a major impact on presidential politics. And both of you are no stranger to these kind of challenges of what candidates have done and what candidates haven't done and how you respond as a campaign. Craig was saying in an email, it's interesting how even the Trump campaign from 2016 decided that they had to pull off all stops to get rid of this story, and now they're embracing it. What's your takeaways?
Well, I think it very clearly is a matter of campaign strategy. Look, in 2016, his first time he ran, is running against a pretty unpopular Democrat in Hillary Clinton. And He actually was running for president, thought he was going to run for president. I'm not sure he ever thought he was going to win, but he was trying to expand his base. He wasn't just trying to appeal to a narrow and sure losing base. He didn't want a story that was going to hurt him dramatically in the suburbs with swing voters. It turned out to be the right strategy for him. He lost the popular vote to be sure, but he won five key swing states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, by razor thin margins. And even though he lost the popular vote, he won the White House. So that was, it worked. But in 2020, it was a different matter. Those double haters went to Biden, people who disapproved of both candidates, and that was enough to flip those five states. But even there, despite the fact he lost by more than 7 million votes in the popular vote nationally, he came within 44,000 votes of winning the presidency. Because if he would have swung three states that were all by less than half of 1%, it would have been a tie in the Electoral College, and he would have won in the House. But as we've discussed before, this time he's running a base strategy. Every time you think he should be trying to expand his vote, he seems to be doubling down on trying to win his base vote. Essentially, what he's saying is, I can't win the popular vote. I know that. He won't say it out loud, but this is what he's thinking. But if I get my base out, I can once again squeak by in the Electoral College. And to be honest with you, from and so as a result, he's decided the best way to do that, given the circumstances of being in court, is to be the victim. So he's going to whine every day about being this terrible victim, how everybody's out to get him. I mean, if Biden were really in control of the courts, I doubt that he'd get all these delays that are going to probably let him get off scot-free on anything that matters. Because if he does get reelected, I'm sure he's not going to ask the Justice Department to continue the prosecutions. So from his perspective, it makes sense. And there are three reasons. One, there's a higher percentage of his base voters who are white, basically white non-college voters, and white men non-college voters in those swing states than there is in the country as a whole. And for all his bravado, and those voters seem to identify with his victimhood. And every time he gets charged with another crime and he whines that he's a victim, his support solidifies among those base voters. So it may not be a larger pool of voters, but it's certainly a more intense pool, and that's what he's going for. And then if there's any kind of third-party candidate in those swing states, as there was in 2016, I think he thinks he'll get by. Remember, he ran better in those swing states than he did in the country as a whole. In both elections, he got 48.8%. That's almost 49% of the vote, as opposed to just under 47 or under 47 overall both times. Now, what that meant is that a relatively small third party vote of 4.5% or so in 2016 was enough to put him over the top. I mean, I think that's what his strategy is again. So I guess for the next 6 months or so, we've got to expect old Macho Man's going to be out there whining about being a victim.
Craig, what are your thoughts?
I look at it. I mean, I see it the same way, but I want to talk about it from a little different perspective, and that is, I kind of wonder what is going on or what's happened to the American voter. In earlier times, um, a candidate is photographed with a young woman sitting on his lap, or somebody is known to be having an extramarital affair, and the candidate drops out. I mean, it's beyond the pale, and suddenly the campaign, which has invested, millions of dollars, perhaps, is over. In 2016, by Hope Hicks' own testimony, the Trump campaign is in full panic because a month before the election, the Billy Bush interview where Trump talks about groping women breaks, and suggestions of other women that he's involved with is out there. And the chairman of the Republican National Committee openly suggests perhaps that Trump should, withdraw from the campaign and take his name off the ballot. And people were wondering whether Mike Pence would stay as his running mate, and could he possibly win? And the numbers went down 20-some% I saw in one story. Of course, I think the one person hasn't changed is Trump, because through all this, he said, "Nope, I'm going forward. You know, my base is solid," and they pushed on. But to me, what the people around Trump, he may not have changed, but the people around Trump and party leaders saw this as nearly impossible to overcome, and because that's where the voters were in 2016. In 2020, went back and looked, and I saw an interview or a story that ABC News ran listing with photographs and their stories 18 women who alleged that Trump had assaulted them. So we know of a couple that have actually gone into trial. Currently, Stormy Daniels is testifying today. But ABC News had 18 individuals, and with photographs, with their detailed story, to which Trump in 2020 said, "I don't know any of them." He just flat out denies even knowing who they are, let alone having any kind of relationship with them. And that sufficed. And so in that 4-year period, where there was this great sensitivity to the American voter in 2016, in 2020, Trump figured all out, denial was fine. And now in 2024, to the point you were raising, on a 24/7 basis, we're getting news about the hush money trial and, like X-rated testimony by, or at least MA-rated testimony by Stormy Daniels in court. And the Trump people think this is a good thing. In fact, when he's not at the trial, rather than campaigning, yes, this week he went out and went back to Florida, I think. I mean, it's just remarkable. I do think that there is more fatigue among the Trump supporters than the pollsters are seeing, as you know, as I've talked about. Some of it translates into Nikki Haley getting votes in these primaries. Some of it translates into hundreds of thousands of Republicans just not even showing up to vote in primaries who voted in 2016. Whether that is enough to change some of these close states, the ones that Al was referring to, I don't know, but the numbers are sizable with respect to Republicans who just don't go out and vote for Trump, either voting for Nikki Haley or just not voting at all. And I think that has to have some concern inside the Trump organization.
Al, changing channels, I do want to talk about the news yesterday that Speaker Johnson once again survived a movement by conservative Republicans to remove him as Speaker. He got a lot of help from the Democrats. But do you think these days are over now? Are we done with this kind of?
I doubt that these days are over, but we probably are done with them for the rest of this year. Uh, I mean, to be honest with you, uh, it wasn't really much of a story yesterday because Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats said, what, a week or so ago that they support him. And I didn't even look at the party breakdown, but there were only 43 votes against him, which is, even if I don't know whether they were all Republicans, I assume that there were some Democrats who refused to support him too, but that's even 43 is a small percentage of the Republican conference. Uh, you know, are we done with these days? No, because we still have a bunch of nutcases who run around, particularly in the Republican Party, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, Matt Gaetz types who don't really respond to institutional pressures. I mean, they do whatever they want to do, and they've got a different audience. Their audience is in social media or cable TV or in the fringe movements, and so they'll continue to be ornery and do things and disruptive. And on our side, you know, there are splits coming too because the progressive left, well, I don't think it's as quite as evil as the QAnon crowd, is also very disruptive, and so it's going to, you know, hopefully after this election, if President Biden is reelected and Trump is off the scene, and there's not that sort of big Trump orange figure looming over the Republican Party, the Republican conference in the House will get back to a little more normal, and maybe we will have normalcy will come back. But we expected that after 2020, and we didn't get it. So who knows?
Greg, do you know?
I know, but I can't say. I think I think the only thing I would add is that a couple of things. First of all, Speaker Johnson actually continues to surprise me in a positive way, in that it would have kind of been natural to just dismiss Marjorie Taylor Greene as not relevant to what he needs to get done. Instead, he spent hours with her and gave her what she wants the most, and that's attention. Uh, by press accounts, 2 hours one day, she came back with a colleague the next day, and still she pulled this stunt, kind of as a surprise. Um, but his effort to deal with the difficult members in the Republican caucus is conference is impressive to me. Secondly, I think that what happened yesterday is a sign that 90% roughly of the members of the House of Representatives has realized they've got a lot of clout, and they just put this to bed quickly, because even though there are disagreements on policy, they do not want to present to the country a completely broken Congress. They actually want to get things done to the extent they can. And if Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't get that message, then good luck. But I think that she has to be waking up today wondering, really what's in this for her. One last footnote, and that is, I believe the reporting is correct. She was. It surprised so many people that when Trump put a message out saying he loves her, but he hopes people will vote to table this, his message hit a short while after the vote had actually been taken. So it wasn't exactly a well coordinated and certainly not a well thought out or well intentioned activity. But I do think it says that Republicans, that some Republicans and many members in the House are determined to try to work together when they can, and they don't want this pure chaos at least between now and the election.
I agree with Craig on that. But the thing about the fringe elements in the House, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and to a lesser degree the Squad on the Democratic side, is their interest isn't in being good legislators. They're not. They use the House as a backdrop for their real activities, which are political and aimed at their greater constituencies outside. I mean, I know that because that's what we did when we built the DLC. In other words, they use the House as a basis to create their own playing field where they can dominate. But what Craig said is really important because 90% of the House essentially said, we're sick and tired of this. So I think the best thing that has happened is they'll be isolated more and more because I think a lot of Republicans feel if they continue these annex, there's a very good chance they won't win the House no matter what happens in the presidential race.
You even had a Republican House member, and there's more than one referring to Marjorie Taylor Greene as Moscow Marjorie, on the basis that they're now actively saying that she's just using Putin's talking points. And a journalist who covers the Hill yesterday was on air saying, you have to realize a lot of these Republicans just do not like each other. And I think that's exactly right.
Well, we have to leave it there. Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thank you so much indeed. We will see you next week.